Picture this. It's the 67th year of the Common Era. You walk through the grand marble streets of Imperial Rome, a city alive with power, dust, perfume, and restless ambition. The sun gleams across towering columns, leaving the air warm and fragrant. Then suddenly, the crowd stills. Whispers spread like a wave. Emperor Nero is coming. Drenched in luxury, his robe glitters with golden threads that shimmer like fire. But it isn't Nero who captures every gaze. It's the figure beside him, graceful, serene, wrapped in quiet confidence. She moves with the poise of royalty. Yet, beneath the polite smiles and respectful bows, tension ripples through the forum like smoke curling from a hidden flame. Because everyone senses it, there's a secret here. A scandal hiding in plain sight. The woman on Nero's arm was no woman at all. Her name was Sporus. Just a boy, barely 15. And what Nero did to him wasn't love. It was domination, power disguised as passion. Nero didn't fall for Sporus, he recreated him. Shaping the boy into the image of someone he had already lost, and already destroyed. Piece by piece, not with tenderness but with ritual, Nero stripped away Sporus's identity until nothing of the boy remained. This wasn't a marriage. It was a chilling act of control, an emperor's twisted attempt to immortalize obsession. It's almost impossible to believe how far Nero went. But before we uncover the depths of this tale, remember this: the truth of history often hides behind beauty. This isn't just a Roman scandal. It's a story of how unchecked power can turn affection into possession, and grief into something far more terrifying. Sporus didn't just lose his name. He lost his body, his voice, his very self. He became the reflection of another's madness, a living echo molded to replace what Nero had destroyed with his own hands. And the most haunting part? It all truly happened. There was a time, hard as it is to imagine, when Nero was seen as Rome's bright future. At only 16, he ascended the throne with charm, vision, and youthful promise. The people adored him. He lowered taxes, hosted games, filled the city with music and laughter. He wasn't merely a ruler, he was a sensation. A performer who shared the stage with his subjects. For a brief, golden moment, Rome believed in the miracle of a kind emperor. But power, when left unchecked, begins to rot from within. And Nero's fall wasn't slow, it was a plunge into darkness. Then came Poppaea Sabina. And everything shifted. She wasn't just beautiful, she was dazzling, the kind of woman whose presence could still a crowd. Yet behind that beauty was a sharp mind, cunning and ambitious enough to unsettle even Rome's most seasoned politicians. Nero was captivated. Entranced. At the time, he was still wed to Octavia, the quiet, faithful daughter of a former emperor. But Octavia was gentle and reserved, fading quietly into the marble halls of power. Poppaea was her opposite, radiant, outspoken, magnetic. She demanded attention and wielded charm like a weapon. She wasn't just a lover, she was power itself. And the world's most powerful man was caught completely in her spell. You won't believe how that enchantment would soon turn deadly. What began as a royal romance soon descended into danger. Nero shocked Rome when he divorced Octavia, a move so bold it sent ripples through the empire's elite. Almost instantly, Poppaea replaced her, gliding through the palace draped in silks finer than Rome's treasures and glittering with jewels beyond counting. Nero surrounded her with luxuries, emeralds from Egypt, perfumes from Arabia, love notes written like prayers. But beneath all that beauty was something darker. It wasn't love, it was control wrapped in gold. Guards were stationed by her side day and night, officially for protection, but in truth, to watch her every move. Her friends were dismissed, her letters read, her words reported. Poppaea was no longer a woman adored, she was a prized possession kept under lock and key. And Nero didn't love her, he owned her. Then one night, the mask of affection shattered. The argument might have been trivial, the kind every couple whispers behind closed doors. But this door opened into tragedy. Poppaea was pregnant, carrying Nero's unborn heir. Yet even that could not shield her from his rage. No one knows what sparked it. Some say she questioned his priorities, others that she delayed his visit to the games. What happened next stunned even the loyalists. In a sudden outburst, Nero struck her. Ancient records claim he kicked her in the stomach. Within hours, both Poppaea and her child were gone. The man who ruled millions had destroyed the very life he claimed to worship. And in that instant, something inside Nero fractured beyond repair. His grief became a haunting spectacle. Nero refused to accept her death, commanding that her body never be burned as Roman custom required. Instead, she was embalmed like a goddess and placed in a tomb more magnificent than any emperor's. But it wasn't just mourning, it was denial dressed as devotion. He declared her divine, the goddess of beauty herself. Shrines rose in her honor. Priests were appointed to worship her memory. Inside the palace, her name was spoken in the present tense. Her seat remained empty at banquets, her gowns laid out as if she might return at any moment. Anyone who suggested he move on vanished from court, or worse. The emperor was now living in a dream, and the empire was forced to live in it with him. Then appeared Sporus. Barely 14, quiet, obedient, trained for service within those same haunted walls. He never imagined the emperor would even notice him. But when Nero saw the boy, time seemed to stop. Sporus said nothing, he didn't have to. The resemblance was uncanny, the delicate features, the soft gaze, the graceful movement. To Nero, this was no accident. It was fate, a sign that Poppaea's beauty had returned. You won't believe what he did next. To the emperor's deluded mind, Sporus wasn't a servant. He was a second chance. Nero didn't see the boy standing before him, he saw a ghost begging to be reborn. And he decided to make it happen. This was no act of love, it was cold reconstruction. Nero didn't want Sporus to look like Poppaea, he wanted to resurrect her. He summoned his physicians with one command, not to heal, but to transform. To turn a boy into the image of a dead empress. Consent meant nothing. Pain meant nothing. What followed was brutal beyond words. Crude instruments, no real anesthesia, no mercy. The palace walls echoed with screams no one dared acknowledge. And when it ended, Sporus was gone. What stood in his place was Sabina, clothed in Poppaea's silks, adorned in her jewels. Servants painted his face, arranged his hair, and rehearsed the way he should smile, just as she once did. He was trained, not cherished. Molded, not seen. Every reflection reminded him of who he was forced to become. A living echo. A doll sculpted from someone else's grief. But Nero didn't hide this madness, he glorified it. He announced plans for a full imperial wedding. The palace became a stage. Thousands of lamps illuminated the marble corridors. Flower petals covered the floors. Musicians played sacred hymns as if blessing a divine union. Sporus, now Sabina, was dressed in a bridal gown made to fit his altered body, his face veiled in gold-threaded silk. Every ritual was performed, every toast made. And though the guests smiled, many trembled behind their cups. Because they knew the truth. This was not love. It was grief turned into theater. A boy made into a ghost. A lie crowned as law. And before the stunned eyes of Rome, the emperor of the world married the shadow of the woman he had destroyed. The ceremony may have lasted only one night, but the performance never ended. From that moment on, Sporus lived not as himself, but as her. Every morning he woke in rooms painted in Poppaea's favorite shades. Her scent lingered in the curtains. Her face watched from every wall. Her name whispered through the halls, but spoken to him. Servants were trained to treat him not as Sporus, but as Sabina. He wore her gowns, her jewels, her perfumes. And beside Nero, he was expected to smile, just enough. Tutors corrected every movement, how to lift a goblet, how to cross his legs, how to breathe with quiet grace. Even his voice was reshaped, softened to soothe Nero's grief. But behind the perfect illusion lived unbearable pain. Imagine waking every day inside someone else's reflection. Living another person's life. Speaking words that never belonged to you, knowing one mistake could cost you everything. Yet Nero did not keep his creation hidden. In 67 CE, he set off on a grand tour of Greece, not as an emperor, but as a performer desperate for applause. And everywhere he went, Sporus followed. Draped in splendor, introduced to foreign courts not as a servant, but as Nero's wife. You can almost picture the confusion, a young figure, visibly altered, dressed like a dead empress, greeted as royalty. Every banquet, every ceremony became a stage for Nero's delusion. He demanded reverence not just for himself, but for the ghost he had revived. And Sporus, he could not defy the lie. So he smiled through the ache, performing devotion for survival. To the watching world, it looked like love. Inside, it was tragedy disguised as theater. But no illusion lasts forever. By 68 CE, rebellion tore through Rome. Governors defected, senators turned traitor, and even the Praetorian Guard abandoned their oath. The emperor who once ruled the world was now a hunted man. Through it all, Sporus stayed by his side, still in silks, still playing the part. They hid in a crumbling villa outside the city. No more banquets. No more music. Only silence, and fear. Nero paced the halls, muttering plans no one believed. But when word came that the soldiers were closing in, his courage broke. Cornered, terrified, he faced the one thing he had always denied, reality. With trembling hands, and a servant's help, Nero ended his life. And Sporus watched. The man who had reshaped his body, stolen his voice, and shattered his soul, died whispering to a world that no longer cared to listen. Yet Nero's death did not bring freedom. It made Sporus even more vulnerable. In the chaos that followed, Rome changed rulers, but Sporus remained trapped. Passed from one powerful man to another, not as a person, but as a prize. Each new master repeated the same cruelty, dressing him in women's clothes, calling him Poppaea's name, parading him before courtiers as if Nero's ghost still needed applause. It never stopped, it merely shifted faces. Some mocked Nero's madness through him, others flaunted him as a trophy of conquest. None saw the boy within, only the echo of a dead empress. Even without Nero, the theater went on. The humiliation only deepened. By then, Sporus had endured everything, surgery, loss, years of forced performance. But Rome had one final spectacle prepared. The new emperor planned a public reenactment in the Colosseum, a cruel show retelling myth, ending in Sporus's violent humiliation before thousands. The ultimate mockery, turning pain into entertainment, suffering into applause. Sporus understood what awaited him. This was a role he would not survive, not again, not like this. And for the first time in years, he made his own choice. Before they could dress him for the stage, he took his own life. No audience. No curtain. No more pretending. His last act wasn't surrender, it was defiance. History rarely speaks for souls like Sporus. To ancient writers, he was only a curiosity, a cautionary tale of excess. They recorded his transformation, his marriage, his disgrace, but never his heart. Never his fear. He became a replica, a memory, a reflection of someone else's tragedy. His dreams and his voice erased. But his final act spoke louder than any historian's words. By choosing death over another performance, Sporus reclaimed what even an emperor could not steal, his identity. He was more than a victim. He was a boy who endured unimaginable cruelty, and in the end, refused to let them take what little remained of himself. His story stands as a haunting reminder: behind every display of power, behind every glittering throne, lie the unseen lives of those silenced, and the courage it takes to remember who they truly are.